The proverbial wise person once told me that at the intersection of any two of your interests, there is a job. Right? At the intersection of any two fields of knowledge, there is a career, or there should be. This could translate to something that looks like a niche for you if you combine things that are not traditionally combined before. And if you are really living in line with your heart space and you are living your truth, then it is way more likely that you are going to find that as you follow all the little trails and paths of truth and knowledge that you're being called to follow, that you will discover that there is a clearing in the woods at a place where you would never think that there could possibly be a clearing, where all of your interests come together and you can see how they all overlay, and it is clear to you that there is actually a reason that you are interested in this subject over here, but also this skill over here, and this type of knowledge over here, etc. There's a reason that the consciousness that is you was attracted to things that felt really disparate. And it's because there already was an intersection, and that intersection is embodied by you. And if you can embody yourself in the truest of ways and embody all of your passions and all of your whims, and then you might find that there is a really particular niche that most people have not stumbled into, and it's pretty exciting. It feels special to do when you do that, because usually people get stuck in this prescriptive idea of what is career and what do you want to be when you grow up. People get stuck. People in the Western anglicized culture in U.S. American society get stuck in this idea of there has to be something that you want to be when you grow up or do when you grow up. And the people who are making those decisions are people who've never even been grown up to be able to know what options are out there. So we have all these people who are blindly picking one field of knowledge and thinking that that's the only thing that's what they're supposed to do for the rest of their life. And in reality, you're supposed to keep growing and keep learning and keep pulling on all the different things that attract you to keep building and solidifying the center of the consciousness of you. And while you're doing that, you're expanding your perspective and your sense of the world and your ability to harness knowledge in an incredibly powerful way for other people. I was interested, this is such a simple idea of the intersection of two areas of knowledge, there being a career, or it's such a simple idea. And then after undergoing a lot of trauma, I had a spiritual awakening and have done a lot of things to help my consciousness to do this expanding thing and help my sense of self to like really stabilize there in the middle. But as I've done this and expanded my consciousness, I've gone back and picked up all these things that I didn't think were ever going to come back into my life again, things that I didn't really think about, that like esoteric kind of stuff that just never seemed like it had a place in my life, spiritual stuff. I used to love like unsolved mysteries and unexplained phenomena and metaphysics and stuff like that, but I didn't have anyone around me who was validating that. And in fact, it seemed like all of those types of topics were the ones that were seen to be maybe more shameful, or certainly unscientific and unprofessional, maybe stereotypes of just it being like an ignorant kind of perspective. And I had no idea. I mean, I don't know who told me all that. I mean, I guess family shunned the idea of tarot and things like that, but nobody, now that I am more familiar, I now know that nobody knew anything about it. And in fact, it's like in my situation, I went for so long being so dug into Western science and the way that Western science does everything and sees the world, that by the time I hit this sweet spot where I had this major expansion of my consciousness, I had picked up so many like very concrete westernized realms of knowledge that I can navigate. And in the course of my spiritual awakening and my consciousness expansion, these concepts that I never ever thought could ever be connected to things like tarot or spirituality or the idea of God, it was like my consciousness flipped out, and all this, and it was like I could see how everything I've ever been interested in crosses over, and why I might have been attracted to certain fields and certain ideas in the past. So my career up until now, I've been a therapist and licensed professional therapist and professional counselor, and specializing in couple and family work, and which led me into sort of a niche area of expertise in attachment and relationships and trauma. Because once I started seeing clients, I realized that everyone's basically a trauma victim. I used to think of that as just being a term that we use for people who've had acute traumas like wrecks, or have been to war, or have been raped. But almost all people have trauma, first of all. And at least in my practice, there was an outsized number of people who had histories of childhood sexual abuse, way more than I knew were going to walk through my office. It seemed more common than not. And I had thought when I was going into practicing that was not an area that I necessarily wanted to practice in, and then I discovered that it's actually way more common than even as a counselor and a therapist, way more common than even I had any idea of. And so I just kept connecting dots and following, the things that shook up the myths and rules that I had in my head about how career works, and how healing works, and and definitely myths about what a person is allowed to do with the knowledge that they have. I realized in the course of my whole expansion, just lost my train of thought. I realized that I have all this expertise in so many different areas, and I feel very confident in my own knowledge, but at the time I wasn't really giving myself the credit. And even when I was telling people what I did, I would always not disclaim, but like cite my sources for everything, such that I felt like I couldn't offer an expert opinion, which I licensed by 2 boards in the state and pay a lot of money to be able to do, offer expert opinions. But it felt like I couldn't even, like emotionally or cognitively, it felt like I couldn't even tell people about what I did without citing a source for why I do it this way, why I came to do it this way, and why and what, or who did the research that backs up this claim that I'm telling you about. And so it always, like, because I get really excited about the sources too, and I want people to know about the origin of how I came to be telling them about this idea that I'm trying to help with. But I found that I was really undercutting myself, and like for a really long time, and like instead of giving myself more viability and more of a standing of an expert, which is what I was trying to convey. I was trying to convey, like, oh my gosh, I know this because of, like, this person over here says it, and this person over here says it. Here's the research and why it works like that. But I, instead of just giving the expert opinion of like, you know, you've had abuse in an abuse situation, your brain does this, and this, and I would recommend you do, you know, go for walks like 5 days a week, for example. But instead of just saying like, here, go for walks 5 days a week, I'd spend so much time backing up and telling people about why that's really a scientific thing to do, that I'd lose the message, would get lost. Whatever I was trying to help somebody with would get lost in all of my own, you know, what I now think of as like insecurity almost, because there's a place for explaining something, and then, but what I think I've been doing, and I think a lot of people, maybe in particular other people who are marginalized, or other women, really always hedge everything that you say. You feel like you're not valid enough to make your own statements, or valid enough to have an opinion on something. But your experience in your life is the most scientific type of observation, the most scientific type of case study that could possibly be done. And there are an infinite number of them, like, that are running simultaneously, because we are all running our own case studies about life. And we bring in and learn disparate things. We learn about what inspires us. We connect the dots, like starting when we're little, and try to follow. Hopefully we have people around us who help us to connect the dots and help facilitate us learning the things that we want to learn. I didn't really have that. I did it sort of on my own, but, and I had really good, I went to really good schools. So it was like, I had people around me who valued knowledge. I just made terrible grades in school. It was really actually pretty traumatic for me, but, yeah, but once you kind of realize that you really do have the expertise to be able to make statements and make observations about things, and not have to justify yourself for every single thing that you've experienced, not have to explain yourself, not have to convince people of your expertise who are not interested in knowing about it. If you have to convince somebody, then they're probably not gonna treat you as an expert anyway. It's like people treat you as an expert, and then you give them your expert knowledge and your expertise, but you can't really it's hard to like talk somebody into believing that you're an expert and then have them, and then also be able to impact their life with the expertise that you're trying to give them. Anyway, this is a very rambling little talk, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about this, because it's a lot of what I'm trying to do with this channel. And as I've had this consciousness breakthrough in like my personal life and breakthrough with my own trauma recovery, it's like so exciting to me to find out that basically anything that I have ever been interested in all can tie back together, and that there isn't any area of knowledge that I've ever been interested in that was worthless. And there's so many things that, you know, people would normally designate as like a waste of time kind of areas of like study, like all the hours that I spent when I was little, like watching anything that I could see on the little, they used to like on TV have like a scrolling grid of like what was playing on TV at the time. And I'm blanking on what that's called. It's like the preview channel. That's what we called it. Channel 2. But like anytime there was something about like Bigfoot or like ghost hunting, paranormal investigation, unsolved mysteries, anything to do with like murder, bloody murder, I was watching it. And all of that stuff. But even the stuff about Bigfoot, like that, all that stuff, like there's a reason that I was drawn to all that content. And you know, part of that is like a cognitive function of like, it's a creative, like to be interested in both very quote unquote scientific phenomena, and then also have the imagination to be curious about what it is that other people are interested in when they're talking about something like Bigfoot, or when they're talking about something like tarot, which to a scientific person sounds like a waste, might sound like a waste of time, or like a waste of like just waste of brain space. I don't know. It's so crazy to me now, because I see value in every single thing that I've ever been interested in. I was loved rocks when I was little, and I even lived in Boulder, Colorado for college, but I still was like in this place of like, there's no way in my brain that there was like actually a reason, an energetic reason that I like loved like rocks and crystals when I was little, because I definitely didn't associate it with like metaphysics. It was just like, I just loved them. And I now can like look back and like I just feel so lucky that I've had the opportunity to like have such a messed up life, that I had this consciousness expansion and have been able to like kind of come back and pick up all these things that I didn't think I would ever be able to pick up, or didn't know that I still loved, like rocks. Like, I'm saying rocks because that's like what I didn't call them crystals, they're rocks, my rock collection. But I went and got my rock collection from underneath my bed at my parents' house like a couple years ago, and yeah, it's just like picking back up the pieces of you, and I'd encourage you to do the same thing. And you don't have to have this idea that everything is going to be a puzzle piece for your career. Just like, if you have an impulse to go get your rock collection from underneath your bed at your parents' house, even though you know it's like not, you know, there's nothing like valuable as like a kid's rock collection, but it was like, I kind of want my rock collection. And it seemed silly, but it just kept sitting with me, and then I finally did it. And then I was also like, started seeing stuff come up about crystals and started reading about that stuff, and was able to, you know, connect the dots from like crystal healing back to everything that I learned way over here in the most concrete of stuffy Western science. And like to connect the person, or the person / the mindset, the belief system that invites and acknowledges the spiritual nature of crystals, to connect that belief set with the one way down here of the geophysicist who understands exactly why evolutionarily, like, crystals are where they are and why and what they do and in the planet and how they came to be, but to connect those two and have a vision of the world, to be able to see the world from a vision where it's like, no, this person is valid to me and this is still valid to me too, and it all complements. It's like so powerful and exciting and fun, and it feels like just sort of it's like this, something like crystals, it's like this secret from the perspective of Western science that everybody knows over here. Like, there's so much money is spent on, like, in the crystal industry, crystal healing industry and stuff like that. And so it's like, yeah, apparently everybody knows it, but like, even these vast parts of our society just don't even acknowledge that there might be something that this person is talking about that's being misunderstood language-wise down here, such that they aren't, they just like never meet in the middle and never talk, and so they never never experience or have the value, like the valuable experience and like the valuable expansion of consciousness and the valuable expansion of knowledge that is possible when you keep following exactly what your heart is interested in. Because if you follow what your heart's interested in, that's when you're really following the things that are going to add up to something that means something to you, and something that actually explains who you are and why you're the way you are, and how it's not just the intersection of any two things where there's a career or a vocation. At the intersection of any infinite amount of stuff, at the intersection of any number of different interests and areas of knowledge, any number, there's a common perspective. And the common perspective is you, yourself. So be the intersection of all the different areas of knowledge and interest that you have. Because it is so much more fun to act from the space of where your heart's really passionate. And you will think it's like so fun to connect the dots in a way that seems really wild to other people, but just feels effortless and natural and like play to you. Because that's what all this stuff is to me, being able to connect psychology and counseling and relationships and sex and tarot and spirituality and quantum physics, which I never and like any scripture from any different religious background, like all connects back for me. All this paranormal stuff, trauma, and just creativity too. Like just being able to play. Like, this is really hard for me making these videos, but I want to do it and figure out how to keep doing it, because I want to be able to find a voice to be able to talk about the intersection of all the things that are me, the intersection of all the things that really light me up, because I don't hear other people talking about things in the way that I see them. And in particular in Western medicine and westernized psychology, there really aren't people who are incorporating things in the way that I want to, or integrating things, I should say. So yeah, just some thoughts this morning, and I hope that this helps somebody. Thank you for your patience. I have a trauma brain, so it's all it's always distracted, and it's hard to follow a train of thought. But that's also like, I'm apologizing for it, but at the same time, I don't want to apologize for it anymore, because like what I perceived to be distraction my whole life was actually just my heart wanting me to pay attention to the things that I was always really meant to pay attention to and meant to do. So try to notice some of your whims that you normally wouldn't follow. Like what are just some kind of silly things, seemingly small, insignificant things that are inspiring or interesting to you, or an idea that just kind of lights you up just a little bit, or just kind of this like something that's been kind of hanging around that you just can't kick. Like, maybe I should go get my rock collection. I kind of want my rock collection. I wish I knew what rocks were in that collection. Like when those things keep coming back around, that is your sign that your heart and your higher self is telling you that there's something there. And you might not have any idea what it is or be able to explain it. And it might not have anything to do with the actual rock collection or anything in it. But wherever your heart is taking you, there is stuff to be learned. And there is play to be had and fun to be had. So, I'm Alice Anahata, the witch in the Glen.